Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home.
Welcome, everybody, to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So happy to have you here. It is a great day to be alive, and I'm super excited about today's topic because I think everybody will have a little something they can take away. Now, if you have not taken the Heal Your Hunger quiz, OMG, it's time. And frankly, even if you have taken the Heal Your Hunger quiz, it's time again because we have a new website. I'm so excited. My website was 6 years old. I had website shame. Anytime I told somebody to go on my website, I'm like, go, but don't go. So anyway, we have a new website. It's gorgeous. And there's lots of goodies in there for you to check out, free resources, a podcast, the TED Talk, the book. There's all kinds of things on there. And we'd love for you to access them by going to healyourhunger.com. But the most important thing you can do is take that quiz, get your personalized score. We've updated the quiz, so there's some different questions in there. Go for it. And if you haven't joined us in the Secret Sauce group, that's another great thing to do. We are on Facebook at the Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating. And join us. We've got a lot of new things that we're starting to do there in the group, which is really cool. And we'd love to have you there. So I want to jump into this topic. And the topic is about triggers. Oh my gosh, what do I mean by that? Well, let's face it. We all have triggers. We all get triggered. And we all need to stop letting people trigger us. Or other things trigger us. It doesn't have to be just people. But this is so important because when we allow ourselves to be triggered, we're victims. We're victims of what's going on around us, and we don't own ourselves. We don't have agency to live our lives how we want to live because we're vulnerable to being set off and pissed off on account of our triggers. So in case you're not sure what I'm talking about by triggers, let me just back it up a little bit. I talk about triggers in my book, actually. My book, Heal Your Hunger, 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now, is a great book. I highly recommend it. And I don't say that from ego. It's just good. I mean, it just lays it out there. And I get a lot from it when I read it. I'm not kidding. Repetition strengthens and confirms. And even though I said this stuff when I read it, I'm reminded of what I said, and it's good stuff. So, okay. So, when we talk about triggers, if you've read my book, it's analogous to hooks, okay? I have a cartoon in my book that's a woman standing there with a bunch of hooks attached to her. Just these kind of question mark looking hooks. And she's concerned for good reason because everybody's going around hooking her, okay? When we have hooks, when we have triggers, triggers come from trauma. Triggers come from old wounds. Hooks come from old wounds. Hooks and triggers to me are synonymous. But we walk around and people can hook us. Anybody can have us. So it's really important to know that, when we heal on the inside, we don't get hooked anymore. And we're not victims of other people's stuff and other people's comments and looks and actions. And that's freedom. Freedom is when we don't get hooked. Freedom is when we don't get triggered. Okay? So this is super, super important. And if you want to read about it in my book, it's it's in the old wounds section, page 138. But anyway, I want to dig into this because what happens with the word, I like actually hooks better because what happens with the word trigger is that when people say I was triggered by something, sometimes, or they say I was triggered by something you said, or I was triggered by something someone did, sometimes there's a faint or maybe not so faint element of victimization, kind of coming from a victim-y place, like you triggered me, so it's your fault. And that's what I don't like the word. That's why I don't like the word triggers, because it can easily fall into the bucket of your responsibility, not my responsibility. Not always. Some people take responsibility for their triggers, but I'm really here to say that the number one step to stop letting people trigger you is to deal with the inside stuff. What is triggering you? Because it's not actually what someone says that triggers you. Okay, so if you feel like you get triggered by certain people in your life, and we all do, okay, so we all do, we all have people, whether it's Aunt Betty or Uncle George or mom or our sister or brother or, the president of the United States or some group, something we heard in the news, whatever it is, if you find that you're quick to anger, if you find that you're quick to lash out or get upset or shut down. There's many ways that we react when we're triggered, okay? But if you find that happens for you, you have that quick impulsive reaction that's almost like out of your control. Like you don't mean to get pissed off. You don't mean to have this reaction, but you have it. That's because you're triggered, and that's because you have a trigger. You have a hook that's getting hooked, okay? And what I want you to do first and foremost is to own it. If you're triggered, it's not the other person's fault. It's because there's something inside of you that's allowing that trigger. There's something inside of you that's not healed, that's getting set off, okay? And I'm going to go back to the word hook because I think that it helps. It's a little bit easier because I'm talking about, somebody hooking us and then having a hook, whereas trigger is the same word. But the point is, you know what I'm talking about, right? When somebody is just like, there's somebody you just can't stand to be around, okay? Somebody just makes your skin crawl. Somebody raises your ire very, very quickly and easily. When you have that experience of like, and oh my God, like get me away from that person, or, oh, here they come, I'm exiting stage left. When you have that revulsion inside of you that comes up around somebody, or it doesn't take much of somebody talking to you before you're filled with like this anger and like you're constricted and you're angry and you're like, you want to lash out. Okay, that's that's you getting triggered. But what we need to do, because so much of the time we feel like I need to not be around that person. I need to not be around that person, or I need that person to be different so that I'm not triggered. And I'm here to say that the first step towards stopping getting triggered is to look at what's triggering you. Not what they said that you wish they'd stop saying. It's why were you triggered by what they said? What is it inside of you that's causing this like very vehement reaction? Because we can't do anything about other people. Have you noticed we don't have control over what other people do and say? Yeah. I mean, we don't even have control sometimes over what we do and say. So how the hell are we going to get somebody else to stop triggering us, stop saying those things? Of course, you can choose to not be around somebody, and that's sometimes the right action. But what I want to say is that you can take your power back by focusing on what it is inside of you that's getting triggered. Where is the trauma that's unhealed that's causing you to react? Okay, because triggers do come from trauma. Old wounds is what I like to call them, but triggers come from trauma. Early on in our life, we had, dynamics that went on in our dysfunctional family, in our dysfunctional relationships, and things that happened to us. And these triggers were set. The trauma was set, and the trauma is now the trigger. And so the beautiful thing is that if we take the focus off the other person, no matter how ridiculous they are, and I know there's a lot of triggering people out there that should just shut up. Okay, I get that. I agree with that. Or they should just go to a faraway island and stay there. But the fact is we can't control what other people do. So let's do the next thing, and really the responsible thing, which is, why am I so quick to anger? Why am I so quick to get annoyed? What is it about me? And so, and that might seem kind of self-blamey, but I'm telling you, we're the only ones we can do anything about. And you can heal. a perfect example is my sister. I used to have a very contentious relationship with my sister. And my skin would crawl when I would talk to her on the phone. Like I just, we had stuff. Like we had stuff that went way back. And so I could barely spend 5 minutes on the phone with her without starting to feel this revulsion inside of me where I just wanted to scream and hang up the phone. Like that's what would happen inside of me. That, friends, is a trigger. So when you feel like you have to hang up on somebody, when you can't, like you just want to scream, I was highly triggered, but that was my trauma that was causing that trigger. Okay. Yes, there were things about her that were highly annoying, but she is who she is. She was who she was. And frankly, she's changed so much, since, 30 years ago. But I had to look at myself. I had to deal with what it was in me that caused such revulsion when I talked to her. And I did. Okay. I did that work. And it was a lot of work. It was a lot of writing. It was a lot of talking. It was a lot of crying. It was a lot of praying. It was a lot of living. It was a lot of, getting back on the phone, trying to be on the phone a little bit longer before I just couldn't take it anymore. I mean, I had to work it. I had to work on this relationship, and I'm super happy to say that I recently went back to Maine to visit my family, and I stayed with this sister, and I just delighted in her. I delighted in her. She's a delightful person, super sweet, and it's not that she doesn't have her quirks, but nothing gets to me. Like, it's incredible. I was so triggered by this person, and now I just see the good. I see the good, and I'm not triggered, which proves my point that the triggers were inside of me, and if I still had those hooks, I would be getting annoyed. I would be getting judgy and snippy and snappy and intolerant, because that's how I used to get when I was so triggered. Now, there is one caveat that is really, really important for me to share. And that is, there's a difference between a trigger and just having feelings, okay? So when I talk about a trigger, I talk about a very strong, knee-jerk, impulsive reaction that doesn't feel good in your body. But there's another kind of bad feeling that doesn't feel good in your body, and that's simply feeling hurt, okay? Now, people will come along and hurt our feelings. They will be hurtful. And when we feel hurt, when that happens, that's a normal reaction. So that's not what I'm talking about when I talk about triggers. I'm talking about like somebody owning you, somebody saying something, somebody doing something that every single time sends you into orbit. So, when you do simply feel hurt by something somebody says, that's a normal feeling. That's a normal reaction to feel. And that's not something we're trying to get rid of, okay? That informs us. Ouch. Ouch. I was just hurt. Ouch. Somebody said something that was insulting or rude or insensitive. And when we have that reaction, the key is not to act out, but certainly notice that feeling. I have a good example for this. Somebody literally last night said something hurtful to me. In fact, took issue with how I live my life. And then they deigned to bring God into it and to tell me I wasn't worthy of God because of how I live my life. And it hurt. This is somebody I know, somebody I would call a friend, who was judging me and then bringing God into it to judge me. I may even do a podcast on this actual topic because it was pretty eye-opening for me and incredibly hurtful. And I felt hurt. And I thought, why am I feeling hurt? And I tried to look into why I was allowing myself to be hurt by this person who was so out of line. And the bottom line is, I'm a sensitive person. I feel hurt when somebody lashes out at me. That's normal. And when I'm not overeating, when I don't have the comfort of food, I don't have the protection of excess fat and food to keep me numb, I'm going to feel the hurt. And that's a good thing. I want to feel those feelings so long as I'm willing to walk through them. And I came right home and I wrote about it. I talked about it. I prayed about it. I took some action. I spoke to this person about how I felt about it. And then I made a decision that I didn't want to engage with this person anymore because I don't want to put myself in that position. Okay. That's not being triggered. That is just noticing your feelings when you feel like somebody has crossed a boundary, lashed out, whatever the case may be. So there's a fine line between feeling hurt and feeling triggered. But my experience with triggers is they keep coming back. They keep coming back. It's an ongoing feeling. And it can often cause us to do something we wish we hadn't done, say something we wish we hadn't said. So, you can explore that and see what's what. If it's simply this person is not a nice person, then you get to choose to not be around that person. It's not so much where's my hidden trigger. It's like, where am I going to stand for me? Okay, so there's a very fine line. The good news is writing can help you know where that line is. Not everybody needs to be tolerated. There are people that you don't have to be around, but you have to get honest about the fact that the people who are close to you, who trigger you, or who do certain things that trigger you, those people can be your teachers. We can be taught by our triggers and the people who trigger us, because if you will get curious about where that trigger is coming from, you can heal what that is, that old trauma. You can heal the old trauma. Now, that's not easy, and you will probably need some help to do that, whether it's therapy or, being in a community of people who are facing the triggers. That's what Heal Your Hunger is all about. My ladies are dealing with their stuff. They're digging in and they're healing that stuff, with God's help. But I'm telling you that it takes work, and the work is worth it. Okay, the work is absolutely worth it. Because we don't want to go around just being at the mercy of other people acting crazy or saying things that we don't like. We don't want to be at the mercy of that, and you don't have to be. You don't have to be. You can heal to where you are impervious to other people's stuff. You're impervious to other people's ways. Wouldn't that be nice? Doesn't that sound amazing? Okay, I'm going to give you 3 ways to stop letting people trigger you. You ready? Face it, embrace it, erase it. Okay, that's shorthand for, and I'll go into it. But first of all, you do have to face it. You have to know, hey, I'm triggered. You have to know that annoyance, that intolerance that you feel, that revulsion that you feel is there, and it's not on account of the other person. So embracing it, you face it, you embrace it, which means you take responsibility. Hey, there's something in me that's getting set off. That's my work to do. I'm not a victim here. If I'm getting triggered, there's something inside of me. And I know this is a tough pill to swallow. Okay, you may not like it, but just try it out. Try it out in your next moment of total aggravation. Face it, embrace it, erase it. Erasing it takes work. My shorthand for that work is write about it, talk about it, pray about it. And my clients know this. They know I say this over and over, and it works, and they're doing it, and they're getting relief. Their relationships are changing. They're not overeating when they feel aggravated. They're not turning to food anymore when they have that feeling. They're taking it to the paper. They're writing about it, talking about it, praying about it. And that's our work to do, and that's our responsibility. We go around blaming other people for how we feel, but that is us giving away our power. Like, you won't ever be strong, confident, and capable in your life, and certainly not free from overeating if you're a victim and blaming other people for your bad feelings. We have to explore those bad feelings, where they come from. What are the triggers? Why do I always feel this way around this person? What's that about? Get curious. Let your triggers teach you. So that is how we stop letting people trigger us. And I want that for you. It's the best feeling in the world. And I'm not saying I don't get triggered by certain people, but if I do, it's my stuff. It's my stuff. It's my ego. It's fear, fear of something I'm not going to get, or fear that someone's going to get mine. It's fear that I'm not getting enough attention. It's ego stuff, and that's mine. That's my problem, not anybody else's problem. So get curious, explore this, face it, embrace it, erase it. But to me, it's good news that we can overcome these things, and we can get to where we're neutral around people that used to drive us nuts. I mean, this is good news, especially if you're living with somebody who drives you nuts. Okay, there's stuff there, and I find that in marriages we pack in resentments over the years, and then we're just one big trigger. Okay, so another thing I want to share around stopping letting other people trigger us is the level to which we react is in correlation to the level to which we're stressed. Okay, so when you're super stressed out, it's easier to get triggered. It is for me. And so I have to watch my stress. Stress plays a big part in stress eating. And it's, again, my responsibility to adopt self-care habits, that can reduce my stress. Meditation, prayer, reading spiritual literature, writing, walking in nature, swimming, biking, going to I go to a bar method class. That just reduces my stress incredibly at the end of the day. But the point is, we have to reduce our stress because we're less triggered when our stress level's down. Have you noticed that when you're tired, when you're hungry, HALT, don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, tired. HALT being the acronym for that. When we are hungry, when we are angry, lonely, and tired, we are more quick to anger. So it's our responsibility to manage our stress, to schedule self-care in our day, so we can do a better job of responding to people instead of reacting to people. I find that the less self-care, the more tired, the more stressed, the quicker I am to get annoyed, to be intolerant, to be bitchy. Okay, so watch the self-care and the stress, because that will affect the level to which we're triggered. So that's what I got for you. Face it, embrace it, erase it. Deal with your stress. If you're running, as fast as you can, burning the candle at both ends, you're one big hair trigger. And it doesn't feel good. And guess what? When we snap at people, when we're not at our best, when we're not loving, when we're not present with people because we're stressed, we feel guilty. And when we feel guilty, we overeat for punishment. So we do need to watch the stress. We owe it to other people to not be running around like a chicken with our head cut off. But we stop letting people trigger us when we look within, when we take responsibility for the fact that we're triggered. And that's my message. It's a powerful message. It's not necessarily palatable, I understand, but it is powerful, and it will change your life. And I hope this has been helpful. I love you so much, and I'll see you on the next show.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.